Good afternoon, everybody. So glad to see so many here. Let's uh, do some little housekeeping things first. Like to introduce to you Ann Van Open. She doesn't want to be recognized, but we'll recognize her anyway. She started the Native Plant website for Facebook site for us. She's also the one that kind of pushed to have this meeting. And along with that, my name is Russ Drew. I'm with the Wrightwood Property Owners Association. And I've been at Wrightwood for 40 some years, right behind, so we've been around a long time. This is about the biggest group I've ever seen attend a meeting in this building. Every so it's really great. So hopefully we have a good program for you. I hope everybody got a chance to sign in the back. And also the restrooms in the building are open, so you don't have to go over and use the portals outside. So now this program, as I said, Ann had questioned with the hardware store. Oh, by the way, Jody from the hardware store is here, so I'd like to recognize her because they do a heck of a job for us all. But she knew that there should be maybe some interest in native plants of Wrightwood. Those of us who lived here for a long time have tried a lot of stuff. Some goes, some doesn't. Some is native and some isn't. But she recognized the need and she asked if there would be any support. So I got with her and said, yeah, I think the regular property owners can support this and we can have this meeting. Then at that point, we didn't even know who we'd speak, but we found a local. He's Jack Grimm. He lives here in Wrightwood, and he's got a lot of knowledge. And, I'm hoping that he and I, after this meeting in the next couple of months, we're going to start doing some work on the trail, to put more natives along the trail too. In November, on November 8th, you're all invited to help us come and plant bulbs. As you know, we plant daffodils every year along the trail to give us a little flowery beauty. We will be doing that on Saturday, November 8th. So if you're interested in volunteering, you can use all the volunteers we can get. In December, we decided that we're going to do the Nights of Lights this year on December 6th and 7th. That will be a Saturday and Sunday. And so if you're interested in doing any of the volunteer work that's needed, you have to build a package of the luminarias. You've got to place them on the trail. We're going to be putting up Christmas trees as we always do at the corner of Boulevard and Highway 2. So we have volunteer opportunity for you there. With that said, Jack, take it off.
Thanks. So yeah, I'm Jack Grimm. People like to pronounce it a lot of different ways, so it's Grimm. And I've been here in Wrightwood since I was 4 years old, so I know our plants like the back of my hand, and I'm glad that there's so many people here who seem to agree with me. So I'll get right into it. So Wrightwood has a lot of native plants. John Muir basically was able to sum it up. He said that the San Gabriel Mountains, Mother Nature is the most ruggedly, thornily savage. So I feel like that really like captures the essence of our plants. They're very resistant to all of the elements, to anything that wants to eat them or set them on fire, or use them for building material. So I think we have a lot of really interesting plants that are actually not available in the nursery trade. All these plants that are behind me are ones that I was able to get, but I'll show you through our talk how many plants are special and rare just to Wrightwood. And I'll also go over the basics of a lot of things because I think a lot of people don't realize how much you really need to. Sorry, am I kind of quiet, everyone?
Yes, be kind.
Sorry. I'm not used to talking to people. Plants are the main thing I talk to people about. So I'll be going over what native plants are, how to grow them, where you can buy them, and where you can actually do more and take action. So I think a lot of people, when they think of Wrightwood, we think of pine trees, probably like apple trees, probably lilacs, roses. All those are great plants, and we have equivalents of them in native plants. So a lot of people don't realize this, but there are almost 600 native plants that grow in Wrightwood. So there's no shortage of selection. A lot of times we'll go to Home Depot and just be looking at everything kind of with our hands up in the air. What will survive snow? What will survive our humidity? What will survive our intense summers? But 600 plants will do completely well here without any intervention from us. So we can make our yards more beautiful with less water. We can make them more fire resistant, and we can also be. We have a unique ability here in Wrightwood to collect the seeds that we have. They're rare plants, so if we collect them and distribute them, we can be a source of this genetic diversity, and maybe even introduce plants into the nursery trade that were not previously in the nursery trade because they're so special. So what are native plants? A lot of people are kind of confused on this. It basically means anything that's been growing here for hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of years. Um, Sometimes we have things that are introduced that can be naturalized, and they aren't necessarily invasive, but they can be okay. They're not taking over any niche for our native wildlife. But native plants, they serve a really important role because every plant is able to support multiple pollinators, whether it's insects, bats, birds, whether it's mammals. It just supports the whole entire food web. Unlike garden plants, which are kind of isolated and provide limited benefit, and a lot of times are covered in pesticides, which will kill a lot of our native plants or native plant and pollinators. So here are some fun things about native plants. um, so I feel like my favorite thing is probably the endless tea. um, so I know there's a lot of garden plants that obviously are useful, but if you look into what all of our native plants do, there's a great use for every single one of them. Um, so another good thing about them is we come with a lot of trees here, so we have a lot of extra biomass. So we can use that for these plants. We can not use fertilizer. We can not buy mulch. We can not buy pesticides because all these things are sort of built into our ecosystem if we just follow what nature gives us. Um, Let me just see. So here are some examples. I have a long list of plants, but I'll kind of go over them quickly, and then everyone can look them up later when they want to. Um, so here is like a really beautiful example of one of the gardens that is in our town next to the pet shop. It wasn't supposed to be all poppies, but you can see the sun kind of divided the garden perfectly where it wanted to. There's poppies on one side, and there is coral bells on the other side, which is a shade loving plant that you'll see often in our creek areas and sort of things like that in the forest. There's also this threadleaf fleabane. That's another beautiful one that I don't really see in the nursery trade. Um, yeah, so let's go over them. So we have a whole bunch of these, and I made this presentation, so if anyone is interested in clicking on these, they actually go to the calscape.org page, which will let you know how to care for them. And if you want to be a really big nerd, you can look at this full list down at the bottom. That's the almost 600 native plants that grow here. So if you're interested in looking at every single plant, I totally encourage you to do that because you might have some of these plants in your yard that other people don't have, and I'll show you later how important that is, what you can do with it. So another um, good thing about this list, this is just annuals and perennials. If you have a small space, if you only have pots that you can plant in, these are great. They'll do fine in pots or small areas. That's kind of what they're used to, is being crowded with each other. So I definitely encourage you to, however small your space is, take advantage of it. And that's especially true for plants like California milkweed and woolly milkweed. I'm trying to still get source that. I wanted to bring some today, but I couldn't find any. And then there's some of these are actually really available in the nursery trade. Desert Mountain Blue-Eyed Mary, Blue Dix, Monkey Flower. All these are pretty available. So it's definitely worth checking it out. Of course, there's a lot of buckwheat species. What's interesting, I think, about buckwheat species is you can look at the common names of them, and you can see right here, Erigonum, I don't know how to say that, Eriogonum is the genus, and all of these have completely different names that don't really imply what they actually are. So it's always important to identify what a plant is by the genus, um, and that will tell you a lot more about the plant, how it grows, what its history is, and what you can use it for, and that sort of thing. So all these buckwheat species, all of them create seeds that can be used as like a food source. Wildlife love them, pollinators love them. Um, and these two you might recognize. Does anyone know the difference between any of these penstemons? Yeah.
The red ones is river.
This one? Yes. This
Yeah,
one?
the one, maybe a instruments Catalyst.
Yes. They're right next to each other. There's a speciosus and a spectabulus, yes. And then the bottom is yep, it is, yeah. And we have those for sale if anyone is interested. These what these look like. So this is why it's kind of hard in the nursery trades. Everybody wants these plants, but when you bring them to people, they're like, "Where are the flowers? I don't understand." Um, but they're beautiful. I'm gonna put this in the recording, but they're beautiful because they look like this all year round. They can look like this under snow. They can look like this when it's 100 degrees out. So that's what I like about them. A lot of times we have garden plants like pansies, and things like that, and they're seasonal. We tend to think of them as okay that we have that sort of intermittent beauty from other garden plants, but we're not as forgiving with native plants. So I think if you just like train your eye to like see what the plant looks like in all of its different forms, then you'll see these flowers for what they are. One of my favorite plants that grows up here is called short trunk beavertail, and some of you probably have it in your yard. Just a really tiny little beaver tail cactus that's just really adorable, and it does fine under snow and everything like that. So um, I think that I was gonna try to get any further with cars. I think that is a really important one. It's actually if you look, that's another tangent, but there's a database for rare plants in California, and it's in it. So there's definitely a lot of these plants that it's important to look at and make sure if they're in your yard, you kind of give them that special attention. This is another one, actually, these really beautiful purple flowers to the left. Um, that's wire lettuce. That's not available in nurseries, but I have it all over my yard, small wire lettuce. So that's like another example. You really want to like pay attention to even the small flowers. It could be something that's really rare and special. And of course you can see these two clustered yellow flower bushes. Um, so one of them is cotton catclaw, the other is spinous horsefish. Um, totally random names for the same genus, but they're really good at supporting pollinators, as you can see. Their little flower clusters just attract butterflies like crazy. And it's a really good alternative to what we'll see often is French broom, Scotch broom, other kinds of broom, that they're all different genuses, but they're super invasive. If you actually drive to the mountains in big burials, you'll see entire hillsides of these flowers that smell amazing, but they're completely a monoculture that has erased everything else that's growing in those hillsides. And they spent a lot of money to remove it. So it's one of those things that, if you see something that you can grow instead, I definitely encourage that. This is kind of a fun one too. Parrish's umblewort. first one, and it's this one on the bottom. Um, it's related to carrot. It has this really beautiful foliage. It looks very like a little cottage kind of whimsical plant, and it doesn't grow anywhere else, and it's not available in the nursery. So you probably see it all over and think, what's this annoying weed? So I definitely encourage you to, look really carefully at those sorts of things. These last three are only, they only grow here. They also have kind of different common names, but they're all violets. So if you like violets, there's native violets. There's almost always a native version of something if you're growing it in your garden. And you'll see these growing out in the middle of the desert where there's just nothing but baking sun and they're just completely happy. And mountain violet is a little bit more shade tolerant. Goosefoot yellow violet is also um, pretty shade tolerant, but yeah. So trees and shrubs, these are there's like a lot of controversy. Everyone talks about trees like a lot. um so if you go up to the mountains and you look around, I encourage you to look for the oldest tree that you can find. And I guarantee you it's probably not older than 150 years. Just because if you can walk up to it and see it, humans can walk up to it and see it, and they've done it. In the 1890s, this area was just completely devastated from this side of the mountain, and especially on the other side of the mountain, closer to LA. All of the lumber was just taken, so especially the older, big, beautiful lumber that was really making habitat, a lot of that's gone. Until you go really deep into the forest, then you can kind of see a little bit more of what it was like naturally. Um, but you'll notice that if you do see a really old tree, it will be so tall that nothing else, no shrubs around it could reach it. And that's what we talk about when we talk about like fire ladder effect. So, Cowscape is really hard on us for that sort of thing. And there is a lot of reasons to be worried about that, because we tend to have plants really close to each other. I have some slides that show it later, but basically we have them too close to each other and they're touching, and there aren't enough resources for them to be healthy. So they're kind of like these scraggly versions of themselves that are just kind of waiting to ignite. But if you look at these older trees that were more shaped by natural processes, like, um, you know, even grizzly bears, when we had grizzly bears, and things like that, you'll notice that they have these really high canopies that go really far out. And if a fire did come through, it would just kind of burn everything low to the ground and avoid most of the tree. So I think it's important for us to look at that right next to our homes that way. We tend to just want a bunch of trees around us because we like trees, but if they're too close, we're actually doing damage to the trees and not really helping them. So a good way we can support trees is to make sure that everything under the canopy is kind of open for the tree. You don't want to be like standing on its feet with other things like pathways or just too many trees. So it's really good to kind of look at that, and I'll go over it a little bit more later. These are some really beautiful shrubs too. This is elderberry, snowdrop, and ceanothus. Um, and here's some beautiful examples of it. Ceanothus is another one that's really hard for people to understand its value, because it looks like this when you buy it. It looks like a Charlie Brown Christmas tree. So, um, it's hard to get people to see that this thing will have these big, beautiful blooms once it grows up. But it's good to know. So just buy the plants for what it is, not what it looks like when you get it in its nursery pot. um, and so a lot of these are manzanita, same thing. They look really small in the pot. So ceanothus, that's this blue one, but we also have some that have white flowers, some that have really different growth habit where they have bigger leaves, tighter leaves. all kinds of really fun ones that you can just kind of like click through these and look at later. I definitely recommend these because they're really good foundation plants. They kind of hold everything together, and um, wildlife just love them. Same with some of these other uh, Mojave Ceanothus. Some of these are only really growing here, um, especially with manzanita. If you have a manzanita in your yard and it was there before your house was, it might be a San Gabriel manzanita, which is not something you can just buy. So it's very important that you like know what these plants are, and if you're gonna plant something next to it, give it kind of that respect that it deserves. Coffee berry, that's another one that I have available. Mm. And it also it kind of has like a little bit of misunderstandings about it. Some people argue about whether the berries are edible, but it was used by indigenous people as food for a long time, especially the seeds. And this is another good like hedge plant. It just grows up really good and dense and supports a lot of wildlife. Um, and those are the sort of things that we're kind of missing out on when we focus too much on growing pine trees or just growing trees too densely in general. You can also see this really beautiful example of Oregon grape. This is actually growing right outside over by the across from the gas station, and it's growing in like literally a square foot of the most compact, terrible dirt I've ever seen. And it's just thriving and loving life and growing all kinds of berries. So um, I think that's a good example of the benefits of native plants versus growing something that's made for a garden. Garden plants are a lot more finicky and love water and being fussed over. And our native plants are the opposite. So if you feel like you're not good at growing plants, you probably are good at growing native plants. Um, and here's another good one. This is our cherry, bitter cherry. You'll probably see this a lot when you're out hiking. There's a little berries right there. And it is so hollyleaf cherry. Yeah, it has these little coky, it almost look like an oak. Yeah. And yeah, it has these beautiful, delicious berries. So that one's one of my favorites. I definitely recommend. And then of course in the bottom flannel bush, where I named my business after. The beautiful yellow flowers that just explode out of every branch. I didn't change these photos, I guess. So we have gooseberries, another really good one. I'd always recommend it. It just looks like a Willy Wonka plant with these big giant fruits that have spikes and stripes and all kinds of colors. Just really interesting. Of course, we also have California wild rose. That's you can't really go wrong with that. We have one of those growing over by the school. You'll see, but there's a whole entire slope that just covered in rose, California wild rose bush. It looks really beautiful. And also woods rose. That one's native to just here. Sugar bush. I have to cover that one. That one's, I say all my plants are my favorite too much, but this one is another good example of it's a very underrated plant. You can tell just by its leaves that it could probably take a whole lot of heat and frost and even fire. If you just blasted something like this with fire, it's probably just going to catch the embers and not burn. So I definitely love this plant, and the berries from it are delicious. You can make a drink out of it. Um, there's another version called lemonade berry, but this one does better with our inland heat. Is also our California rose. You can see it has a lot more delicate leaves and drum. Oh, there's another. There's a thing. And of course, this is elderberry. So you can't go wrong with that. It's an amazing pollinator. The nursery actually grows it in this tree form so that instead of it having a growth habit where it's all shrubby and kind of overgrown, it'll be a nice tree that we can get berries from. Or not. What's that? I think most of my shows. So, and this one, of course, I don't know if anybody knows Toy On. Yeah. So this one is great. This one is actually what Hollywood was named after. So you can tell it has these very beautiful Hollywood-like leaves, and the berries on it are red. And the berries will be on it all through the year. Even in the cold months of winter, you'll see it just under the snow, just berries still on it, and all the wildlife love it. So,
What is the name?
Toyon, um,
You know why?
yeah, it's in my list. Um, and this one is got to get honorable mention. I do want to say, if you do grow this, this is lilac, or sorry, it's honeysuckle. So if you do grow this, it does have the potential to have a pathogen that's passed to oaks. So I would say if you grow it in a pot, or if you have oaks anywhere near you, or maybe just grow something else. um, so yeah, that's something we have to consider too. Is we don't want to be bringing um, anything to us. I mean, the garden plants bring so many other worse things, but that is just one thing to know.
How far is how far?
I would say like if you can see an oak, don't plant it in the ground. Yeah, if it's yeah, if you can see, I just it's one of those things that is you can't really get rid of it if you have it. So I would just be careful. Um, Another good plant, of course, is red willow. That's considered a keystone species where it grows. Um, Keystone species support so much wildlife that when there's one of them, it kind of represents the biodiversity in the area, and it's kind of like a little haven for everybody. Um, so yeah, and there's a beautiful snowdrop, brown leaf snowberry, sycamore. Actually, this is a red willow down at the bottom. Oh, sycamore. Mhm. So yeah. Oh yeah. This is why I deal with clients. Oh no, what have I done? I think I messed it up now. Purple. Yes. Oh, I forget that kind. So that was a lot of plants, and that wasn't even all 600, you guys. So to grow native plants is a lot easier than you would expect. I took a 3-day course on it for my California Native Plant Landscaper certification. And there was a lot of information. I'm not gonna lie. But if you just do these things, it's mostly what you need to do. So if you choose a plant for the location, that'll be the biggest thing that you want to do. All of these plants, you can look up their species name on calscape.org. Um, calscape.org has all of the information about how to grow them, what kind of sunlight they need. I'll just pop in so I can see. So I definitely encourage you all to check this out because it also has a great map of where the plants grow. Um, Shows all of the plants' information, how big it gets, um, even if it has a smell to the flowers, all kinds of stuff. Um, how often to water it, the cold tolerance. An important thing I think too is plant communities. We are kind of in a pinyon juniper woodland, even though Wrightwood's at the very end of the forest, we're more of a pinyon area than we are like a true pine forest or subalpine forest. So that's good to know. But here's the red berries of the tour. So yeah, they're gorgeous, and you can see the range it grows in. And there's also a new feature that they're adding where they show what pollinators and wildlife are supported. So it's kind of neat to see that. You can actually see the actual species that you can help out. Because there's a lot more species that need help than just monarchs. Um,
Is there a section where you can dance out in this in fall?
let's see.
Like,
Yeah, I think that there might be something you can search for by that, like a special feature.
oh, yeah. What about something that goes like, you know, and that's it. And stuff like that.
You keep pulling up the same thing. What is it? Um, yeah, I'm not sure. I have to look into that. But it should, yeah.
On Cascade, we can go in and select flowering season,
Oh,
shrub, or like
really?
free filters.
Okay.
Specific information lists for it.
Okay, well, that makes sense. So yeah, maybe by doing that, it'd be able to find the fall season. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, Pelscape has all of the information that's update that you could ever want on the plants, I feel like, so it's always good to know. And then when you plant them, um, just make sure that you get the entire root ball wet. Um, Make sure that when you dig the hole, you water the hole first. Um, if you when you take out the plant from the pot, um, there will be like a bunch of just loose dirt kind of like falling around. Put that in the hole and then mix it around so that your native soil and the soil that's in here kind of mixes. And then put it in, make sure it's all compact, uh, not too hard, and then water it really good. And then you should be good. It only really needs to be watered until it's established. So you just want to keep an eye on it and make sure that it looks like it doesn't have any signs of being drought stressed or anything like that. And then you should be good. We do have kind of dry winters lately. We used to have really, really wet winters, and it would be perfect for all of these plants, but you might actually have to go out a couple times. I did when I had to get plants established there. I went and watered them in December and January. um, and if you don't want to do it because it's cold or you don't have like your faucet hooked up because it's frozen, you can always just fill up a container with a hole in the bottom and then just put the container with a hole in the bottom like next to the plant. It'll slowly water it over time and then you don't have to um, actually get out a hose or anything to water it. Um, Mulch is another good thing, but we don't really need to buy any. We kind of come with plenty pre-installed in our forest. So I definitely would discourage anyone from maybe wanting to go buy any. Um, you can just ask your neighbor who has too many trees, maybe make some trades for it. Um, One of my favorite things to do is just smash up a pine cone and use those little pieces. Makes a really good mulch because it's really well aerated and also it's pokey, so it keeps some of the wildlife from your plants. And watering. So when you water them once they've been established, you want to water them completely to where you're actually getting all the way down to the root. And that's really hard to visualize until you've actually like just watered everything and then just go out into your ground and like dig up the dirt. And you'll kind of be shocked how much water you actually need to water something. So it's always good to have areas that you start with, get them established, and then move on from there. Having a bunch of things here and there and trying to do drip irrigation and stuff, you're going to be kind of putting a lot of water into the ground and more likely risking mold and things like that. You want to focus on what it says with the plant communities and say, this plant grows right next to this plant. Just keep those plants grouped together, and it'll be so much more successful than trying to grow them one at a time. Another thing that's important days like this, if you might actually realize if you go out and dig and look how much the rain has penetrated, you might realize it's only penetrated a couple inches. Um, So that is kind of crazy to think about. All these trees are really dependent on water, and the water we're getting just isn't soaking all the way ground to the ground. Um, so a good way to help your yard, at least, even though we can't save the entire climate, um, you can just get a regular sprinkler, put it up on high somewhere. You can get a rake or something, and then just turn that on and make sure it covers as much of your yard and your trees as possible. Ideally, you'd have it totally drench over your trees, but since that's not really practical, we just do as high up a sprinkler as you can. The commercial version of that is these pop-up sprinklers. They start up about like this high, and then they pop up from there, and then they just kind of cover an area in a rain-like way. Those are great if you want to actually spend the money and just do it. Otherwise, just a sprinkler or hand watering is fine. There's no reason to get complicated. And there's also smart irrigation systems are funny because they are designed for garden loving plants. So they will detect if it rains and they will not water. Now that's the opposite of what you need from native plants, though, because they want to be cool and shaded when they get water. Because if they get water during hot, sunny times, it will inhibit bacteria and mold growth. That's something that can pretty easily kill an oak, um, a flannel bush, a white sage. A lot of these plants that are really sun and heat loving, it can actually kill them if you water them in summer. So that's also kind of an advantage. You can just kind of take a break from watering in summer with native plants. So when you're supposed to not water, it's perfect. So you always want to make sure, though, um, just like in nature, there used to be a lot more wildlife running through manzanita bushes and flannel bushes, and there used to be mammoths walking around stomping everything to the ground. There used to be indigenous people who would walk by and take a take a branch to use for an arrow or something. So all of these things were naturally getting cleaned up in a way and used in a way that made the plants grow great and made fire not really as much of an issue as it is. So we have to kind of take that role in our yards and gardens. Um, and so one way we can do that is just pruning things. You can have fun and make it like it's a bonsai, and make it look beautiful how you want. And it's kind of a really enjoyable thing because it's just kind of like spending time getting that plant happy. Um, so you can also plants that are regenerated by wildfire. Um, there's a lot of ways you can get around that actually. So you can either soak them in charcoal, or you can actually nick the husk of the seed, and that kind of makes makes the seed grow in a similar way. There's an entire talk I could give on that alone, but you can check out propagating native plants on Facebook. There's a whole group that's dedicated to that, and I'll tell you a lot more. Um, and also the California Native Plant Society in general is a good resource for that. So this kind of goes over a little bit what I was talking about. Um, Everything was kind of shaped by these things for a long time. And if you go up into the mountains now, um, we've kind of made every person leave. We've kind of made a lot of the animals go. So there's not really anyone there moving these materials around anymore. That includes seeds, that includes nutrients from knocking branches down and smashing them into the soil and all kinds of that kind of stuff. So we can kind of emulate that in our garden, and you can see the succession of what that'll do to the soil over time. So that's how we create more topsoil, and that deep topsoil is how we can actually support trees better. So if we're not like recreating that soil, we're actually going to have a lot harder time supporting our oaks and pines. Um, and that's, I think, kind of important because you go around town and you see a lot of pavement right up to a tree trunk or or something like that. And these poor trees, it's like they got their feet bound up and they're just like, I can't get any nutrients, somebody help me. So this is a big way that we can do that, is just opening up the area around the pines and oaks, letting water penetrate, um, letting some of those natural mulches fall. Um, and of course, you don't want it to get built up, but if it's not too crowded, there's not too many trees, you won't really have that issue. So that's why you want to just pay attention to these plant communities because it'll it'll show you that balance without you having to really know what to do. Um, and then so one of the best things you can do is just not plant invasive plants. um, and this is the thing that I would say reserve your tomato throwing to the end of the talk. Um, because I know this is a topic that a lot of people are not fans of. But especially when you're adjacent to a natural space, national forest, you don't want to be planting any of these things. French broom, like I said, that's taken over Big Bear. Deerweed is a great example of an alternative. It looks almost identical, and it supports a lot of habitat. Um, Oleander, I don't know why we plant oleander everywhere in the universe, but it's literally poison. And there's a desert willow that looks exactly like it, and is beautiful and supports a lot of wildlife. Um, Another one is blackberries. They can kind of get invasive in wild spaces, just because they outcompete other things like our currants and gooseberries. So if you grow currants and gooseberries, you're actually feeding the birds, and then they're dispersing those seeds out into those forests. So, um, if you really think about it like that, when you're choosing between invasive and native plants, you'll always want to go with native because the birds are going to do the work for us to reforest everything if we just choose those instead. Um, Another good one is ferns and morning glory, or like it's called chaparral bindweed out here. That is a great alternative to English ivy and Virginia creeper. Virginia creeper and English ivy are everywhere in Wrightwood, and they're some of the worst offenders for taking over a forest. They can literally grow up a redwood tree, topple it down, and kill it, and then the send out more ivy to keep going the same. And their roots are just enormous and require saws and huge amounts of physical labor to remove. So, if you have any ivy, just kill it. All right, that's for tomatoes. That's for tomatoes. Okay. So yeah, that's just the one of the best things you could possibly do is just not grow either of those. Um, and there are great alternatives that do climb as well. That it's beautiful honeysuckle, like I was saying, but it does have the caveat of you don't want to plant it with oak. So there's a lot to consider for sure. Ceanothus. Oh,
Different vine similar to honeysuckle that you would recommend.
I wasn't able to find a whole lot that can handle our frost. But the Calistegia species, that's that chaparral bindweed, and it kind of has like a growing habit of a vine. It tends to like to be on the ground though. Yeah, it's one of the hard things. I don't know why we don't have native vine things like that. Well, we do have grape, so there's always that. Um, Native grape is always a great option. And instead of lawn grasses, especially because a lot of these tend to be invasive, um, yarrow or carex species are a great option. Yarrow is kind of unassuming. This is actually a cultivar that has yellow and orange flowers that are really beautiful. But it's not in bloom right now. And I sold all of my blooming yarrow to show the difference. I forgot to hold on to one. But basically, when this is in bloom, it has these big, beautiful stalks of flowers. There's a native one that is all white. There's a lot of different cultivars. The cultivars are always trademarked, which bothers me. So I would always recommend, if you can, just getting the right yarrow. Because technically, if it's trademarked, you're not supposed to propagate it and all of that nonsense. Um, that's not how plants work. So I do have like a little bit more information on the invasive info, but if you go to the actual invasive species California Invasive Species Council, they will tell you more about this stuff that people don't like to hear, but is really important. Um, so birdseed, unfortunately, is a really big source of weeds, especially in Wrightwood. So if you do feed birds birdseed, I would recommend at least solarizing it, making the seeds so they're no longer viable. This makes it so that you can still feed the birds, but you don't have to worry about them taking those plants or squirrels taking those plants, climbing them, and then it growing these invasive things out in the forest. Likewise, hayseed and animal feed are one of the number one sources of invasive species. A lot of them came here with Spanish settlers on horses and cattle and things like that. And they're just the biggest source of fire. Um, they just really obliterate entire ecosystems, and uh, the chaparral ecosystem that we have in the southwestern United States is actually being taken over at a rate faster than we're losing rainforest. Um, and it's being taken over by these invasive grasses. So if we can keep them under control, it would it would really change the future of California. I think if you actually go out to Yellowstone, you'll see there are areas where you're not allowed to have viable hayseed or other animal feed because it can escape into the fragile Yellowstone ecosystem. So there are ways that they've done it. I just would I would love to see stores voluntarily do this, or California voluntarily do this, where they just make it part of the process where when it's goes through it just becomes non-viable seed. Um, because there's really no way to catch up without doing something about that. Um, but in our yards and everywhere, if you don't have a yard, I definitely encourage you to like just ask around. There's like public spaces everywhere that we can just say, hey, can I do something with that? And people will probably let you. Um, so I definitely encourage you to ask around. And if the only thing you do is take out the weeds and let the native plants grow, I think you'll be really surprised about what you'll see. I've done that a few places in my yard, and I had things come up that are completely rare, and I'd never seen them before. So I definitely encourage that. Another problem we have is we bring a lot of European garden plants here. Um, Amaranth, St. John's wort, foxglove, mullein, butterfly bush. A lot of these are really, really invasive once they escape our gardens. So it's really important to think about alternatives when we want to grow those, or if we do want to grow them, just grow them in a greenhouse. Um, so yeah, don't plant invasive species. Don't plant any seeds in the wild. Even if it is a native plant, you don't want to disrupt the genetic diversity that already exists. But if there is a place that has been taken over by people, if it's part of some easement or whatever, have at it. But just if it's in the forest, you don't want to disrupt that genetic diversity. It's there. Um, so yeah, just always if you do want to remove a species, you don't know what it is, just ID it first. We'll go over that later. But you just don't want to ever pull something you don't know what it is. And ideally don't let it grow if you don't know what it is. um, so always clean your shoes and your camping gear. That's another big way you can help. And then just don't bring plant materials from one place to another. Um, and then yeah, don't use animal feed if I have a seed. So pest management is a lot easier with native plants. We don't really have to worry about um, a lot of the common insects. Mostly what you're gonna see is ants. And they're gonna farm things that are common insects like aphid and scale. And so the biggest thing you can do is just treat the ants. We have Argentine ants, odor ants, and a few other invasive ants. Um, and those are the ones that can actually like suck the juices out of the plant's roots and stems and make it not thrive and die. So that's the only thing you usually have to look out for. But in general, if you find where the ants are, if you just kind of bug them, disrupt their nest enough times, keep treating it with some borax and sugar, you just mix 2 parts sugar, 1 part borax, and a little bit of water, and leave it out, and the ants will go in there and eat it and then die. And I don't normally ever advocate for anything, but that's the only way you can get some gardens to get established because the ants can actually really devastate them. And if you have any kind of infestation, you don't really need to spray. I don't know why we invent spray for ants when you can just spray them with soapy water. And it does the same thing, and it has since time immemorial. So definitely don't bother buying anything that's gonna poison any more than that. And so rodents, I think, are the biggest challenge. Yeah. Uh, but you know, they're adorable. I love chipmunks, so I everything that I do is with sensitivity to chipmunks in mind, which makes me have to be nice to ground squirrels. Um, and rats, unfortunately. But a good way to just kind of deal with most rodents is to not give them so much food that they'll overpopulate. And then the problem will kind of balance if you have a water feeder where coyotes and birds of prey and that sort of thing can visit. Then they'll just kind of balance it for you. Um, so a lot of people, if you have like a chicken pen or you feed your animals outside, something like that, just don't give them food and then they probably will go away. Um, so gray squirrels are kind of like the odd one out in that regard because they just like to party in our gardens, like raccoons, kind of like I don't know what they're doing most of the time. They're just kind of having a party, and there's not much you can do about that, unfortunately. But if you find them digging a lot of places, um, sometimes I feel like they only really do that when they're getting unnatural food sources and they're just trying to hoard it for the winter. So a good way to avoid that in the first place is not feed squirrels, as hard as that is to do. Um, but they do a lot better with native plants anyway. One thing I know from being a big fan of squirrels and chipmunks is that if you feed them peanuts and if you feed them sunflower seeds, they actually deplete the calcium in their bones. And it can do it to the extent where they can get sick and die. And this is also true for some birds. If we feed them too many kind of like junk foods, which is what we're feeding them in bird feed essentially, that can actually make them sick and have what they call angel wing, where their wings are not able to support their weight and can't fly. Um, so it's definitely important to understand how native plants can feed them and understand how you can feed them that way, and then they'll be a little bit less greedy, a little bit less likely to party in your yard and that sort of thing. Raccoons also, they're kind of crazy. You just kind of have to get creative with large rocks and other heavy things to keep them from totally digging up plants. Um, yeah, it kind of varies with them, but um, you do want to be careful with raccoons because they have a deadly parasite that can get in your brain. So wildlife rehabbers are always kind of adamant about, a lot of people like to welcome raccoons in their yard, but you want to be careful about that balance. You want to like be inviting so many raccoons that you're making a health hazard. Um, Deer, I don't know if many people have that problem up here. Other native gardens do. Um, but you can always just put wire around your plants that are getting established. And I do encourage you to try the symbiotic relationship with them. If there's too much of obviously like European rats, they don't belong here. There's not much you can do about that. Unfortunately, they will probably have to be removed some way or another. But if it's an animal that is native to here, you can kind of have fun with figuring out what they would leave alone. um, so that's why some of the selections I have, there are a lot more of these pokey, hardy things to get established. Toyon, you pretty much can't go wrong. And it'll be really rewarding once you finally figure out how to feed them with native plants. I have chipmunks in my yard that their favorite thing is desert almond. And they'll go and stand on this little rock and just eat these almonds, this one after another. And it's just like so amazing to see. And I had no idea that that was even a food source for them until I saw them eating it. Um, so it's really great. Now I grow it all over my yard as much as I can, and I used to not like it. um, oh, my picture didn't load. So you'll always want to go back if you're ever confused about all of this information. It's always good to just go back to traditional ecological knowledge. And that is a whole other field of study that I am interested in, but I couldn't even begin to skim the surface of in this talk. Um, but basically, everything before 1492 was pretty well managed without having a lot of these crazy things that we're having Cal Fire do. Um, and one way that I feel like you can really visualize that is in this native plant talk over here by Greg Rubin. He goes over a lot of um, the the ways that fire moves through the landscape, and he has examples of houses where fires come all the way up to the edge of it, and by the design of the house and design of the landscaping, it just stopped. So it's really important, I think, if you don't get anything else from this talk, to check that out. Um, it really shows how you can plant things that can catch embers versus clearing everything and then having invasive grasses take up the the space, which essentially allows embers to just go straight to your home. So he has this really good way to look at it. There's also um, going by Cal Fire's new recommendations and stuff. There's a little bit more information. He also mentions like what I was talking about with having more manicured looks to your native garden. Because if you do tend it a little bit more and use some of those materials, uh, it'll actually be more fire resistant, because the main thing that prevents fire from reaching a structure is the hydration of the plants around it. So it doesn't really matter what plants you have as long as they're healthy and hydrated. Um, and that's, you can think about a lot of things that brought up where, the tree's too close, if they're touching, if there's that fire laddering effect where things are a little bit too crowded, um, that sort of thing. You can just kind of like look around your yard and like, just imagine if there was just embers blowing through it, and you can kind of see, a little bit better what he's going through. And it's, kind of a scary thing to think about, but I think that's why native plants are a really important thing to add to our landscapes. You can kind of see, like I was saying with this plant, um, if an ember fell on this, it would just piddle out. It wouldn't do anything. Um, Same thing with these yarrows and things like that. They're so good at holding on to moisture, um, and they don't need very much water to begin with. So yeah, and you guys can read over this a little bit more if you want later. Kind of running on time because I like talking about plants. Um, but yeah, luckily, we don't have to invite mammoths into our yards. We can just prune instead. And then also, if you want to follow some of the interesting ways that you can germinate plants that are fire germinated, you can just follow those kind of indigenous practices. Sometimes they would soak seeds um, in ash and things like that. And I know probably some of you got in trouble for having junipers, and you were probably asked to plant those back in however long ago that was. So that's like, I think, a good example of why, there's Cal Fire code, there's all these other recommendations. But if we just keep going back to the traditional ecological knowledge, it tells us how having balance really shows um, shows up in fire safety and plant health and biodiversity and a lot of other ways that we don't even really have to think about once we just go that route. Um, and this illustration over here kind of shows that too. So you can see with the bottom, that's what the invasive grasses will look like from the soil view. there's just nothing really going down into the soil. It's not really creating any habitat. Um, and it's causing erosion, which is kind of making the problem worse because then it covers the other plants. They can't really breathe. But once you have these prairie grasses and other different flowers and things, it can support um, that microbiome, the underground network of mushrooms. Those will all be recycling nutrients into the soil. Those are all like things that we kind of take for granted, but they're super important and they don't really happen without healthy, biodiverse plants on top. So one way we can do that in our yards is these few little examples I have. The middle one is that pine mulch I talked about, where I just smashed up a pine cone. Actually, the squirrel did it for me. Um, and I just put all the leaves into my garden. Another way you can do that too is using rock mulch. So if you do have a lot of areas that are really exposed to hot sun and you're planting in it, you probably want to have like a ring of rocks to help collect water and help protect the roots from too much sun exposure. That'll also help as well when if you plant now for fall. In the winter, all the rocks will kind of allow the water to percolate in slowly, kind of like keep a little bit of that heat in there so that the roots can get more established before winter is over. And it's kind of hard to tell, but this one on the left is actually a bird's nest. That little bird's nest is in a flannel bush. So um, I think it's important too that we remember that small plants are also as important as big plants when we're doing this sort of stuff. We don't have to have like big giant things going on like trees or whatever to make a difference. Um, and yeah, native plants use lots less water. You can select for how much water you use, what plants you pick. Um, yeah, I kind of went over a little bit of this. Basically, like, don't get too complicated with your watering. I feel like watering is the biggest thing that people forget to do, and if you forget to do it, then that's the problem. So whatever makes you able to do it, by all means, that's the best way to do it. Um, And then, of course, watering for fire safety, we do want to have, like I was saying, those high overhead rain events are what really help plants because their breathing happens in the leaves. So if we have too much pollution, dust, or any of those other things on the leaves, they can't breathe. They can't really transpire the water that they are absorbing. So it kind of like stunts them. So it is good to have that sort of event where you have a lot of water raining down onto them, rinsing off the little bits of dead stuff and bringing it down into the soil. That really helps to build the soil as well. And swales or swale, swell. Swales or swell. I don't know if you know what a swale is, but basically just dig a tiny little impression in the ground and water will fill in there naturally and you'll start to have a place where plants will establish well. So I saw somebody actually do this really well in Apple Valley. Um, just next to their road, it was just always getting flooded and it just looked terrible with just dirt. So they dug it down through a bunch of native grass seeds, and then in a year it was just this beautiful lush meadow, just with native grasses. So it's really something you can do really fast. It helps a lot with erosion. Once the water goes into the swale, it percolates down slowly. So that's actually a really good way to water your trees. So like I said before, how we have the issues where we'll get a rain event like this and it's probably going to be dry under a few inches. Um, when you have a swale, that changes it because it really collects the water and allows it to slowly absorb. Um, so in these instances, you'll actually probably be able to, water a oak tree or a pine tree. You just kind of have to plan it based on the size of your area and everything like that. Um, and definitely I would encourage if you have the ability to make one of these, it's good for not having too much flooding and erosion and that sort of thing. So another thing about water use, so half of our water use goes outdoors. So that's crazy to me. Um, I tend to think of water as like something I need for drinking and hygiene and something like that. But most of us were putting it straight into the ground. So I think it's good for us to think about other ways that we can collect water and reuse it. There's a lot of fancy ways you can do that with gray water recycling systems, or you can even just kind of have like a setup of your own where you just reuse water that's lightly used. Um, so that's something that I think we should reconsider because where we are, obviously drought has shaped these mountains dramatically. Um, so Mono Lake is a good example. Um, there's actually a, a giant environmental disaster there because we're taking too much water. Um, but because of native plants, people taking out their lawns, a bunch of stuff like that, Los Angeles has grown in size and has kept its water use the same. Um, so I think that's what's really important about water use with native plants is that we can dramatically reduce the amount of water we use and still have these really beautiful lush landscapes, um, and also not be causing environmental destruction elsewhere while we're kind of feeling good about our yards. So I think that's an important thing for us to consider. Here's like where I did kind of like a reshaping of a yard for all of that purpose. I pulled all the weeds down in the middle and I took all the rocks and left them on the side so it could keep the slope stable. And you can see I left the trees' feet kind of open. And this was just like a slope that was kind of washing everything down into their garage area. And now it's a little bit of a hiking trail. And then year after year, you can just pull the weeds out, throw them back in the hiking trail. They'll just disintegrate. And then it'll just get more stable. So that was kind of a fun little thing I did. Then of course the brush pile is controversial, I'm sure, but I these animals have to live somewhere. So if you have anywhere in your yard that can accommodate a brush pile like that, that is far from structures, and you can just pile it there and keep it contained to there, I definitely would encourage it. So here's some examples. This this bottom one is the squirrels having fun planting pine cones in my newly planted plant. So that's just an example of the chaos that can happen, but it's kind of fun that they feel welcome in your garden. And this is a beautiful collection of plants that just would naturally grow together well. White sage, um, silver lethan, and penstemon. Arrow penstemon. Here's the elderberry concoction that I made at the Moonlit Peddler's Potion event. um, and this is one of these plants that just popped up out of the middle of nowhere when I decided to start weeding my yard. Um, it's a Mariposa lily, and they grow from these little tiny, almost invisible bulbs. Um, and I wanted to make sure they survived because I had a bunch of ground squirrels, so I actually threw them within my cactus, and that's the only place that they're still living. Um, this little arch over the chair is actually that desert almond I mentioned that the chipmunks love. So this grows like a weed all over Wrightwood. And it has these beautiful little tiny fuzzy fruits that look just like a little peach. And wildlife absolutely love them. Um, this is one of my plant displays. I did with Slithers and Falls. They kind of got me into talking about plants. And yeah, so this is that garden that we planted over by the pet shop. You can see it was literally just like used as a driveway before. Um, and this is right after the installation, right below it. Some of these plants they didn't survive. I think it kind of wasn't maybe watered enough early on. Um, but most of them are still there and doing really well. Here's another version of like a creek where a native plant just pops up out of nowhere. Um, so if we tend these places and just pull out the weeds, the native plants will just show up without us having to do much. And these two bottom ones are kind of an example of what was talking about with the fire ladder effect. We can kind of see, zoom in. So you can kind of see like all of these trees are very young, except for the ones way in the back that look like lollipops. And those are growing in the habit that's more natural for pines, where they have this really high um, canopy, and then everything below is kind of cleared out. And then these areas where it's growing really dense, that probably is because we were logging it or something at the time. It's hard to say for sure because this is right next to this spring. It's up on Highway 2. So yeah, just another example where if people were really like tending it, there's just so much that we could really, so much more beauty that we could have. And it's a real shame that plants aren't as accessible as they should be. You shouldn't have to have 9 different degrees or permits to help out. um, so where to buy native plants? So native plants are for sale at the hardware store today. Um, and you probably saw that. But one of the best ways you can find native plants is calscape.org. That website has nurseries. Um, you can view garden designs. You can find landscape professionals. Basically, everything you need to find plants is going to be on calscape.org. And I can't recommend it enough as far as the plant descriptions and everything else that they give you is really valuable. And if you are in a store and they don't have native plants, or you want to know if they have native plants, I definitely encourage you to ask everywhere you go, because I'm tired of doing that. Getting the weird looks. But another place you can source them is local schools, community colleges, universities. They all have their own garden agriculture programs, and it's a good way to get involved. Um, I would definitely encourage you to, if you have any of these native plants growing on your land, collect the seeds and share them with any of the schools that you can. One of the best ways I think to do that is, I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but with the iNaturalist app, you can take a picture of a plant, get good idea of its leaves, preferably its flowers, everything identifiable about it, and you can post it on this app called iNaturalist. Um, so once it's on there, you can have actual researchers look at it. They'll ID it, and if enough people confirm the ID, it'll become what they call a research grade ID. So that means that actual scientists all over the world, if they're looking for information about this plant, they'll see your plant and they'll see that it's confirmed ID. And you can even take that link, put it on your seed packet, and send it to the schools. Then they'll know for sure what plant it is. They'll know where it was sourced from, which is also really crucial because um, nurseries, even if it's Cal Botanic Garden, they have to get a permit to go into the forest. They have to do a lot of really difficult stuff to get these seeds. So if we have them growing in our yards because we're just lucky enough to be in a national forest, one of the most powerful things any of us in this room could do would be to document it, share those seeds. And if you want to even get more extra about it, you could have a little pressing of that plant and keep it with your written ID that was research grade. You would be a scientist essentially doing that. And it would be really valuable. I think that a lot of the plants that we have in this area in the San Gabriels are super special. They're really hardy. They're really resistant to pests. You know, they can be under snow, which is another thing that is kind of rare. So it's definitely a good thing to do. Um, and then of course you can always exchange them with neighbors. That's a great thing to do. There's, I think, a plant swap Facebook page for Wrightwood. Cuttings are another good thing, but just keep in mind that if you do a cutting swap, it's going to be a clone. So there won't be that added biodiversity of seeds. Another good way is if you want to become a Monarch way station, you can sign up on monarchfellowship.com. Um, they'll send you seeds and you can collect those, make plants, sell them, just get a bunch of milkweed and things out there for people. Um, I signed up for them, but I haven't gotten seeds yet. I think it's because our area has very specific milkweed and they don't grow that. Yeah, darn it. So we have two different species that grow here. So I'm gonna do my best to get those available sometime soon. Um, so another thing to know for sure, like as tempting as it is, don't go to the forest and steal seeds. Because it's the wildlife need them more than ever. Um, and then yeah, and the another thing that's kind of interesting, as far as like how I was talking about adding plants to the nursery trade. Um, so one of the major popular plants called Pestemon margarita bop. It's a weird name. And I looked into it and it's because it's named back of the porch because somebody found this low growing variety of penstemon on the back of their porch. And then they added it to the nursery tray. So if you have anything that looks special in your yard, you might have something that's like that that you can, bring to the world. Um, and then also, of course, you are on native land. I definitely encourage you to check out native-land.ca. That'll tell you about whose land we're on, and you can learn about that land from the people, which I definitely encourage. There are plenty of events and workshops and all kinds of things like that that they have open to the public, and they definitely they need people to listen and they need people to share what they're saying. um, so that's like a lot of why I'm here. So I want to share what people have been saying about this land since before 1492. So um, that way you can take action and learn more. um, so all of these, I would definitely encourage you guys to follow all of these people. California Native Plant Society is like the reason I'm here. Um, like back in 2016 when everything was kind of crazy, I just started saying I want to see plants in my feed instead of a bunch of people fighting. And then I just I just kept following that, and people who would probably fight with me normally they're my friends. So I don't really have any problems with how that worked out. So I definitely encourage everyone that if you can, join hands with people across, different divides, California Native Plant Society is the way to do it. You can just literally learn everything and meet all kinds of wonderful people. And then, of course, iNaturalist, the app is great. There's also an app that iNaturalist created called Seek, Seek. And that's kind of a little bit more kid friendly. So if you have kids that want to get into this, but they're kind of like, I don't want to do all the research grade stuff, it's kind of more gamified, like a Pokemon game almost, where you can see like collect the butterflies in your area and fun stuff like that. So I mean, I have fun with it, so I definitely think kids would too. Another really great resource, the other reason I'm here is the Chino Basin Water District Community Center. So that place is amazing. Unlike a botanic garden or something like this, um, the the community center has a garden that is for landscape plants. So it's kind of like walking into a very beautifully landscaped area, but it's all native plants, which is nice because it's it's more beautiful than nature can make it. And I feel like that's what the goal is with our yards. We want to have the optimized version of whatever we want to see. So I think that they do a really good job with that. And they have different plant communities that you can look at, see the plants that they're growing and mimic it. And they also have hands-on landscape design things you can do there, all kinds of fun stuff. Um, and then, of course, there's the California Botanic Garden Nursery. If you do want to see some of these plants growing in a more natural state, um, that's a really good one to go. The Xerces Society, they're all about insects. They're kind of like the leader in insects, which sounds crazy, but that was also kind of how I got into this. I really like beetles, so I learned that beetles are a major pollinator. And 1 out of 4 of everything in the planet is a beetle. So somebody here's a beetle. So it's definitely good to know about them. Um, and they do a lot of important work in our ecosystem. Another good one to follow is California native plants. That's an indigenous person who sells native plants, which is awesome. Of course, Transition Habitat Conservancy. If you're not following them, definitely do. They also do plant sales for native plants, then talks and all kinds of wonderful things. There's also Friends of the Angeles for um, our area of the forest. Mojave Water Agency sometimes does cool stuff. I would definitely recommend Redwoods Rising if you want to know more about like forestry and stuff like that. They are actually trying to restore some of the redwoods that we lost. So it's a very big task. Um, there's also the Master Gardening Program. I definitely encourage you to check that out if you are interested. Master gardeners are like a resource for their community, and um, it usually focuses more on garden plants, but they are trying to open it up a little bit more to other stuff like native plants. Of course, if you're into foraging, you have to follow the Black Forager. Yeah, she's amazing. I can't recommend her enough. There's also another person I forgot to put here. His name's Ethan Trapper. And what he does is actually forestry in kind of like the Midwest. What's interesting is he talks about um, managing trees in a way that's kind of a lot of my information has come from him, where he talks about supporting the oldest tree that you can first. That's the best way to prevent uh, as much loss as you can, and then from there you can look around it and see how you can improve the area. But if you always support the oldest tree first, and um, the healthiest tree, um, that goes a long way. So yeah, definitely follow him too. Um, So I also definitely encourage you to take action. If this talk was moving in any way to plant native plants other places than just your garden. If you have any kids in your life, definitely get them involved. It's really fun and rewarding. It's kind of a lot more fun and rewarding than trying to grow basil or something like that. I never grew it as a kid. It made me think that something's wrong with me. So I think native plants are kind of fun for that reason. They're very forgiving. You can literally stomp on them and they survive. So they're great for kids. um, so yeah, and definitely if you're ever in a store and you see any of these invasive plants for sale, a lot of people just don't know. So you can literally like um, if you like to be the good guy or the bad guy, you can take either route. If you like people not liking you, print out the invasive species list and bring it in. If you like people liking you, then print the native plant. That's something, you know. So it's kind of up to you. And I definitely encourage you, if you're driving around and you see these things too, so like, we're driving around the freeways in San Bernardino County, we can talk to our local government officials and say, hey, what the heck are you planting ice plant for? We learn better. So enough people say it, then they hear it and they can hear the information that they need to hear to make actionable changes. Um, so that's the main thing, I think, is, if you reach out to somebody, say, hey, I noticed there's this, you should change it, maybe you could do this instead. It gives them a lot to work with. So I definitely encourage reaching out to anywhere, especially if you work somewhere, you look around in your landscape and you see any of these invasive plants. Ask them, maybe they know the landscaper, you can talk to the landscaper. It's amazing what you can get done with just talking to a few people. um so yeah, that's pretty much it. If anybody's interested in buying any of these plants, I have more than just inventory. Is one of each of what I have. Um, I will be bringing them back over to the hardware store, and you can purchase them. And also, if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask me. Could you share this presentation? Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. I'll post it on the internet. Is that good with you? Do you follow Facebook? Yeah, okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll post it on Facebook and share, and you guys can share amongst yourselves. And then yeah, all these links in here, there you can click on them and they open up to the actual plant. So
Consulting, like
I do, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah, so if you want to follow my business is called Flannel Bush Gardens. So yeah, just reach out to me on there. I do and I also work with landscapers too. If they have questions, if you just want to have me like talk to them and be like, let's do this and make the plan, I can do that. Um, it's one of those things that I'm also passionate about kind of changing is it's not very accessible for a lot of people to get their hands into the garden. So I'm always trying to do it, but my hands are tied because I don't have a landscaper license and I don't have an architecture license, and that is crazy to me. That literally like stuff that is like traditional ecological knowledge is behind many years of documents and degrees that I have to get. So I'm happy to work with anyone who has these documents and degrees too. If anyone knows anyone with a C27 license, please tell me. But would love to work with me about native plants because I definitely I think that I mean I could do a lot. So um, yeah.
are there any machinery grapes that do better than others?
Yeah, I think Oregon grape does really well. That's that one that was in that planter out there. This one, this big giant one. um, yeah, so it's called Oregon grape. Oh, they're edible.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, they're just tiny and there's big seeds in them, but oh, so these are also native. This is what it's like a cultivar. So it's called Rogers Red. So it has this kind of beautiful fall coloration to it. So yeah, that's something also that's available is like full on like more grapey grapes. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh sure, yeah. That would be great because we're gonna put some on the trail. So I'd love to do an order of just our multi. So yeah, we can do a sign up list for that. Oh, yeah. I don't think it's available in the nursery trade, but I have some in my yard. I can get you some cuttings. Yeah, so yeah.
The Oregon grape you're talking about, is that the one that's just, does it have a twinkly stickers on it?
A little bit, yes.
I know when my son lives in Washington, it's invasive.
It is.
They do everything they can to get rid of the deer, the turkey, bring some home.
Yeah, so there is I don't know if Washington is a place where it's invasive. Maybe it might be another kind of
Invasive.
is it the same species you think?
That's why I was.
Oh, okay.
It's the one with the little sharp.
Yeah, it has sharp pointy leaves, yeah. It's also invasive in Europe. Yeah.
But it's okay.
It's okay here. Yeah, it's Oregon grape is same as like a California native. So
And the same thing with the I always call it Tennessee walker. Tennessee. A creeper.
oh, Virginia creeper.
What is it? Virginia.
Yeah,
State.
that one's bad.
Now that just showed up in my yard.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Did I rip it all out?
Unfortunately, yeah, it's pretty bad. I have it in my yard too, and I'm like, if it ever berries, I just pull the berries off of it. So that's kind of one thing you can do if you really like something, but you just got to be pretty vigilant. So like I've had ivy that didn't grow berries for years and years. Um, that's when it's gonna be a problem, but you just don't want to risk it. Um, and it's also poisonous. Yeah, yeah, I know. That's a good sign that a native plant would probably go there if something's not growing there. Yeah, so that is one of our problems. We have really compacted, unhealthy soil. So a lot of times the first thing they'll grow will be like what we call pioneer species. And those are oftentimes invasive plants because they're so good at growing anywhere. Um, so if you do see an invasive plant growing, it's a good sign that something can probably grow there. So I would definitely like encourage you to pull it up and try try something. Um, but yeah, one of our biggest problems is like the compacted dirt. A lot of our areas when the houses were built, just a tractor running over dirt is enough to compact it to make it where plants can't grow. Which is crazy to think about because that's almost everywhere around us, and everywhere around us we plant plants. So we just have to kind of be aware of that sort of thing, and if we want to have success with the native plants or any of our plants, we might have to do some decompacting of the ground and that sort of stuff.
Last question, that
Mhm.
sagebrush that grows everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. Big mountain sage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was required to get rid of it 10 feet from the road. So now
Right.
this ugly, I did not attempt
Yeah.
that. Then would make that stuff look pretty so I don't have to live the rest of it out.
Yeah, that's one of those things you can kind of like treat like a bonsai plant, like kind of follow the structure of it and like trim the little dead things
It
and
just eventually dies.
yeah,
It doesn't really die,
it just kind
it's
of
like
right. Yeah. Um
fire has it.
yeah, the sagebrush is kind of one of those things. I don't let mine get too crowded. Because of that, it really does need the bottom like water to look good and healthy. Um, and sometimes, especially if it's like right next to a road, it might just be getting really hot and dry, and then it's just kind of looking bad. Um, I think that's a good example of where, you know, they're kind of right, Cal Fire, and like maybe if there's too many of those when they're too scraggly looking, it's a fire hazard. But you could probably do well to plant in between them something, like the penstemon. These are a good example. Especially if you're making it look like it's a manicured, like intentional planting. Um, yeah. Oh, to hold the hillside.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So if this is good for that. That'd be one of these little guys. This. Yeah, this one is a variety called Joyce Coulter. So it grows a little bit more compact. Um, there's a lot of different varieties of Ceanothus. So it's always kind of hard. You have to know which ones will do okay in frost is the main thing. Oh yeah. I use desert almond. Um, prunus. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, it's like related to cherry. Prunus.
Yeah.
Um, fasciculata.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. So just desert range almond.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I have two short questions. What is the native milkweed that you're
Oh yeah. Yeah, let me pull that one up. So that one is woolly pod milkweed. Um it's called different things. So one of them calls them woolly pod milkweed, but these are the two species names right here. Yeah. So California woolly milkweed. And they're so darn hard to find. Yeah, so exactly. That's my concern too. Like, I don't even want to buy the seed. I just know it's not gonna go well. Yeah, we have really, really low humidity here, so that it makes it really hard to establish plants as well.
and then the second part
Oh
of my
yeah.
question, sorry.
Mhm.
I don't know if many people have issues with gophers. I look at it Orange County or my sister
Oh,
just right here. But all this is very informative for me for like higher elevation.
yeah.
Sorry. But as far as gophers, I noticed in your notes there was something about like, gophers are gonna really damage a well established garden. But with your experience or knowledge, what are your comments on maybe landscapes that are barren or there's not much there, and the gophers have already infiltrated,
Oh,
and you're
okay.
planning to landscape or
Want to?
re-landscape that area.
Okay.
Strategies are recommended.
That's hard. I would probably even start with like attracting predators before you do you think? Yeah, like, a lot of times when it's overgrown, it just means there's not a predator in the area like that. So, you could do like a watering hole, make it really kind of where there's little hiding areas, and then, traps birds of prey and things like that to kind of help you. I don't kill animals, but, I understand when people have to trap them sometimes. I think you might do well if you do. Sometimes what people will do is go for cages, just to kind of get established. I never use them just because I feel like it was causes problems later. You gotta dig it up and figure out where it's caged and some of the roots again eventually. So, um, I think that, it's one of those things. I kind of think if you just give them enough like problems, then they'll leave. So when I was dealing with that in the community for the memory garden, I was just kind of going around the ground and stabbing it. So that all of their tunnels collapsed and they're just kind of like, well, this is rude, and they just kind of they kind of
Hostile environment.
yeah, yeah, and they kind of feel like, it's a lot more work for them to come back and dig another tunnel to eat it. So it kind of reduces the damages. Yeah, and a lot of times, what they're actually looking for is bugs. So if they're kind of overpopulating an area, it might just be one of the bugs that are there. So sometimes you can water it, put like a cover crop like poppies are really easy to establish. And they'll eat those really readily. So you could do that and then it will kind of get the area healthy. And then maybe say kind of stash bugs in it, and then like a balanced ecosystem. Yeah. Yeah.
See, my case to fish was I literally go, it's all bird. They're deep finding fire trees and mountains, just did that. You're the Santa and rabbit. Is there anything else that you would put there that would be helpful? Is that
Yeah, so for smokes, especially if you're trying to establish it quickly, I might say like California buckwheat. That does really well. That's this one. This one's like kind of a sorry looking one. It's like another example of why like a lot of times people will buy something if it's in the nursery and just look at funny, but it has these really beautiful white flowers that turn into like these rusty maroon colors. And it works great as like a stabilizer of slopes. Um, so yeah, yeah.
just out of curiosity, you said there's a lot of people are pretty lots in Whitney.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah.
They did our backyard with a lot of because we have to do our subject. So we're trying to figure out, well, we want to use rock because we do have a lot, but we want to use some structural living type things. Native brush
Oh,
have
okay.
next to the level.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you're saying, I mean, we go for ice and we just see a lot of really pretty, things like what you said there, but
Yeah. Like this, yeah. Yeah, these are always fun for like a football play. I feel like they're called Toyon. And these are the ones that have those really big, beautiful red berries.
yeah.
And they can be almost like you could put them into a tree kind of, and it's almost like a small oak tree. So that one's really nice. There's also this collie cherry too. It's a really good like focal plant because prune it more like a tree, or you can leave it more like a bush, and it kind of takes up the area. Um, yeah.
The second question in regards to why we do want to we do get a lot of DJs and we do get artists. We just do have a partner, but if knowing what you mentioned in regards to wanting to provide them the right kind of food, Kind of like that idea of that almond, the desert almond.
Yeah.
Those available.
That's one of the few ones that's hard for us to get. So, definitely one of those I encourage anyone who has seeds, and yeah, to grow.
Mojave Desert Man Trust is where you go always.
Oh, okay. Oh,
There
okay.
they carry fish. Have not the inventory list yet, but I think that's some desert from it.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. So, promote what is it again?
Mojave Desert Man Trust.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I follow them. Yeah, Mojave Desert Zion Trust. Yeah, yeah, awesome. Yeah.
Yes, they never realize
Yeah.
their service does not allow anyone to get up plants themselves.
Right. Yeah.
Few files in Eureka.
Right. Yeah.
They find this guy's $25,000. Where's contact really complicated extra stuff, certain classes.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely stay in contact with the national forest instead of you know, obviously don't take anything from the forest ever. But yeah, you can really ask questions about anything to them. There's for instance the Angeles as well. Yeah.
And you're talking about their seedless going to fewer apps.
Right. Yeah.
Still like to use that like eat or
Yeah, so I had a photo on my slide, but it's not loading. So you can make, there's like instructions for it, for like kids to do even. You just make a little solar oven. And it's just like kind of like a pizza box with a black inside of it. And then it has like a reflective thing on the top, and it focuses the sun down. So if you just solarize the seed for a day or something, it'd be enough for it to make enough light. So yeah, there's lots of different ways you can do it. You could cook it in your oven too, but that'd be a little crazy.
AI says you can microwave it.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, there's lots of ways. Yeah, but yeah, it's a really helpful thing. Oh yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh yeah, so high desert was a lot of people don't realize how close we are to high desert as far as like what it is of plants. Like these yucca, for example. Um, these are kind of fun because there's just so many uses to them. Traditionally they're a food source, so people would grow them, and then their root ball is really gigantic, and um before they flower it's the biggest, and you can actually like eat it and roast it. So and before they when they flower they die, so you may as well enjoy it anyway. Or like the seeds if you really want to. But yeah, there's a lot of the obviously the California buckwheat is one that I love. It looks so like not good in a pot. But when you have it in the landscape, it's these big beautiful mounds of white and maroon, and like it forms a really even mound too. So it's just kind of like a really nice looking plant in the landscape. Trying to think what else does well in the desert. Most of these are a little bit more water wanting. Oh, here's one. So elderberry does really well in the desert. It loves heat. This actually does well in Mexico as well. And these are the ones that have the big berries that wildlife love, and you can process them into jams, medicines, all kinds of stuff. So yeah. Oh yeah.
My name's Lana. I live in Oak Hills, so whoever lives in this area, I'm a planter.
Oh.
Planter.
Oh.
we have 4.5 acres, but we just moved in September 22,
Oh, okay.
and we planted
That's hundreds. Yeah, that's amazing.
and every year we add more to it. I actually belong to a bunch of garden groups. And we're having a native plant talk on October 18th at the Desert Springs Church. if anybody's interested, I can give you my phone number. You can send me a text, and I can send you the information. We're also doing a native seed swap after the talk. So, we also do garden tours. They're doing a fall garden tour. They do a spring garden tour. Gardens all over the high desert. You can go up Valley, Hills, Hesperia, Phelan. Um, all different kinds of gardens. My house has been on the tour a few times.
Okay.
So I have a vegetable garden and I have tons of natives.
Oh, awesome.
So if anybody's interested in doing a garden tour with the garden groups here in the high desert, they offer that. I mean, you can see all kinds of different things. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
And it's just Facebook gardening and desert.
So the woman who puts it together is her Facebook is Saving Greens Homestead.
Oh, okay.
And she's just a local. She lives in Victorville, and she started doing the tours 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And they've grown immensely. I mean, now we do it's the 4 Saturdays in June, and we do each city every Saturday because there's just so many gardens
Okay.
to tour, and it's an
And
all
right
day.
Join. I know we're the wild one out. But
No, it's not.
yeah.
Yeah, Wrightwood has its own
We're like
plants,
slightly different,
but-
yeah.
native plants.
They would get left out. I feel like the mountains need to join like Big Bear, Arrowhead, need to have that
Well, I came up here,
festival.
and this is
Yeah.
Wrightwood.
Right,
But
yeah. I feel like it's
native
similar.
plant, I'm
Yeah.
still-
It's a really similar
Still equal.
ecological niche. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the high desert mountains and the high desert. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Guys, I got seeds to share.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, awesome.
so, so much fun.
She's been on the by the and I had a around downstream. Oh, desert.
So they're separated, these are blended.
Yeah.
Oh, you.
So, these two,
Okay, I'll send them. Does anybody want seeds?
Also, if there's any plants that you might be interested in purchasing, and he was he was kind of on this back there,
yeah.
doing this again. Back in what place? And we could give them a list of plants that people accept. So I got a good spare out there. Very in touch. Any further questions? All right, well, thank you. Grace. So this was, as said in the beginning, was the first time we wanted to see if there was an interest, there is. And it set up a native plant Facebook site. So you can go on that site and look more on Facebook. And we hope to do this again. We're going to have probably this year we'll go back to Iowa the spring garden fair. And this will be a part of that too, the section. And then I'd also like to, she came in later, but a member of our CSD board, Martha McCall's is back there. Standing. Martha, big loud. Martha's also in charge of our Adopt a Highway program with the property owners. And we did the California Cleanup Day just recently. If you saw our post, we got a lot of garbage. And that wasn't in the capital. We went out and one bike came. But anyway, so those are activities, and if you're interested in volunteering for any of those, you can talk more. Or go to our site, you'll see it. All right, well, we thank you all.